Coming up on Top 30, the latest on Hurricane Irma. Was your data released in the second largest hack ever? A pen that can detect cancer, and American Sloane Stephens wins big at the US Open. It is all the news you need to know. This is Top 30.
Hurricane Irma isn't a hurricane anymore, but it's still incredibly dangerous. Irma was downgraded to a tropical storm early Monday morning as local officials and first responders urged Floridians to stay inside. On Monday, the storm still had winds of up to 75 miles per hour. It's been over the state since Sunday, where it's destroyed homes, flooded the Florida Keys, and left almost 6 million people without power. Miami Airport was completely shut down due to water damage. Much of the city's streets had flooded, but the damage there wasn't as bad as expected. The National Hurricane Center says Tampa could be at risk of flooding for days, with storm surges as high as 4 to 6 feet above sea level. The winds reached more than 400 miles from the center of the storm. And to give you an idea of how huge that is, when Irma touched down in southern Florida, it also brought rain to the other end of the state and parts of Georgia. The city of Atlanta, which is hundreds of miles from any coast, was placed under its first ever tropical storm warning. Other states that will be affected as Irma moves north are Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, and North Carolina. At least 26 people were killed in the Caribbean islands, where Irma hit first before making its way to Florida. One meteorologist said, quote, "It's the worst storm I've ever seen." Irma is expected to become a tropical depression on Tuesday, but not before bringing more rain, wind, and damage.
Hillary Clinton said, "I am done with being a candidate," in an interview with CBS Sunday Morning over the weekend. The interview kicked off a promotional tour to mark the release of her memoir, What Happened. Some of the stuff she revealed was really quite mundane. She cleaned her closet in a frenzy after losing and started breathing through alternative nostrils. I've no idea what that means. She believes using personal email was her most important mistake, and also said, "I had not drafted a concession speech. I'd been working on a victory speech." Meanwhile, Joe Biden's daughter says that she hopes her father will run again, but admits the decision is a ways off. The Washington Post lists Biden as the #2 most likely Democratic candidate for 2020, behind Bernie Sanders. But here's the thing. The men would be 78 and 79 respectively on Inauguration Day. One might argue the Democrats need some fresh blood, and quite soon. This is what's trending. A Delta flight from Atlanta to South Bend, Indiana, was overbooked by just one passenger on Friday. The airline began offering money to anyone willing to give up their seat, but even into the thousands, no one bit, until Tracy Jarvis Smith took it for $4,000, which is not terrible income for a 9-hour delay. Another big winner this weekend was Rafa Nadal, taking his third US Open title on Sunday, beating Kevin Anderson. American Sloane Stephens and Madison Keys battled for the women's title, with Stephens victorious, having just returned to court after surgery in July. And here's an absolutely remarkable detail. She was ranked 957th just last month. But #1 was Stephen King's It, which shattered box office records over the weekend. The R-rated horror brought in $117.2 million. And the Creative Arts Emmys Awards were this weekend, with Stranger Things taking home 5 trophies. Saturday Night Live took 5 awards, and Melissa McCarthy took Guest Comedy Actress for her excellent role as Sean Spicer. And finally, during an online interview with 60 Minutes on Sunday evening, former White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon said firing FBI Director James Comey was the biggest mistake in modern political history.
George Clooney got candid about fatherhood over the weekend at the premiere of his new film, Suburbicon, at the Toronto International Film Festival. He told People magazine being a dad made him face how chaotic life really is, saying, "I was surprised how much I thought I had in control and how little control I actually have. I have none. I think everybody quickly realizes that." And in an exclusive with The Hollywood Reporter, the 2-time Academy Award winner said the love story with his wife, human rights attorney Amal Clooney, began over email. We were writing each other, emailing, talking mostly about what was going on in each other's lives, and over a period of time, it became clear we were more than just friends. They tied the knot in a private ceremony in Venice, Italy in September of 2014, and now have 3-month-old twins, Alexander and Ella. On Falling in Love, Clooney said, "I'm sorry I was 50-something when it happened, but only because I could have spent more time with her." Thanks, George. Now we're all crying.
3 executives from the credit bureau Equifax sold off company stock before they told their customers they had been hacked. The breach is believed to have compromised the names, birthdays, and social security numbers of 143 million Americans. While the public only learned of it last week, Equifax knew they were hacked on July the 29th. On August 1st, 3 members of the company's senior leadership sold off stock in the company worth almost $2 million. This according to the SEC filings reported by Bloomberg. A spokesperson for Equifax said the executives, quote, had no knowledge that an intrusion had occurred at the time they sold their shares. Chief Financial Officer John Gamble sold shares worth over $900,000. Their president of Information Systems made over $500,000. The president of Workforce Solutions made $250,000. If you believe your information was compromised in the Equifax breach, find out what to do next by checking the Top 30 Facebook page. Americans across the country gathered to honor and remember the victims of 9/11 on the 16th anniversary of the attacks. At Ground Zero in New York, thousands paused for a moment of silence at the exact times the plane struck the World Trade Center towers. The names of the more than 2,700 people who died in New York were read out one by one in the emotional service as bagpipes played and bells tolled. In Washington, D.C., President Trump paused for a moment of silence at the Pentagon, where 184 people were killed, and laid a wreath at the memorial. Vice President Mike Pence traveled to Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where people gathered at the Flight 93 National Memorial. The heroes on board that plane sacrificed their own lives to save other Americans by taking over the plane and crashing it into an empty field. Almost 3,000 people died on 9/11, making it the deadliest terror attack in US history. More Top 30 after this.
Now to Nicole Petalitis at the New York Stock Exchange for our Fox Business Minute.
In business news, it's only one day away, the new Apple iPhone. Well, reports are 3 versions and could cost you about $1,000 for the iPhone X. And some of the other updates that you could see: new moving emojis, 3D facial recognition, replace the fingerprint, and updated AirPod earphones. Nike making more investments in robots, about $100,000, in order to create robots that use static electricity. The automated machine will be able to position sneaker pieces in about 50 seconds. Takes a human 10 minutes. And Equifax customer complaints continue to pile up. This was the 2nd largest hack ever. Worst part is, will the hackers be able to file taxes in your name and even get a refund from the IRS?
Children grow so fast. It's a shame their clothing can't grow with them, which is why 24-year-old Londoner Ryan Mario Yassine created PetitePlea. It's a line of children's clothes that grow as your kids do, earning himself the prestigious James Dyson Award in the process. Yassine, a recent grad from the Royal College of Art and Imperial College London, was annoyed, frankly, at how quickly his niece and nephew outgrew their clothes that he bought for him. Inspired by his frustration, Yassine used his aeronautical engineering degree to develop pint-sized outfits made from durable, sustainable fabric that grow with their owners. The clothes, which are waterproof, machine washable, and recyclable, were developed to resolve wastefulness in children's fashion. Waste not, want not. A parent's dream come true.
While there may not be a cure for cancer yet, there is at least a better way to detect it. Scientists at the University of Texas have developed a handheld pen that can identify cancer cells in less than 10 seconds. That is less than 10 seconds. The technology also has an incredible 96% accuracy rate. When used during surgery, no cutting is required. Just a little drop of water from the pen can be used to analyze the tissue to determine if it's cancerous and needs to be removed. The team noted, quote, "One of the greatest challenges a breast cancer surgeon faces is determining the delicate boundary between cancerous and normal tissues. The hope is that with this pen, no cancer will be left behind." The LA Clippers are offering new seats they're calling Star Courtside, and the tickets will cost $175,000. So what exactly is Star Courtside? It's a section of 8 seats per game on the floor next to the players' benches. ESPN is reporting the $175,000 price tag covers all the home games for the season and also includes access to the team's all-inclusive clubs, in-seat waiter service, valet parking, and access to a VIP entrance. That's a lot of money just to walk into a separate entrance. The Clippers president said the seats will be seen on television, so they're perfect for someone who wants to get noticed or just a hardcore fan who wants to get closer to the action. If you'd rather spend $175K on something else, then you're doing the right thing.
The world's two largest fashion companies are making major changes aimed at protecting models. The two companies, LVMH and Kering, own luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, Christian Dior, and Gucci. Now, the models they use will have to present a valid medical certificate showing they're in good health. Both men and women will have a minimum waist measurement, and models under 16 must have a chaperone on site. The changes come after two casting directors were fired for allegedly leaving 150 models cramped under a dark stairwell for hours while they went to lunch. More Top 30 after the break. In today's Hometown Stories, 20-year-old Jenna Lyon is a senior at the University of Kentucky College of Education. But on the weekend, she becomes the teacher. 5 years ago, when Jenna was still in high school, she started the Chance to Dance program. It's a free dance class for kids and adults with special needs. Jenna told Fox Lexington, "I don't try to change things because I don't think they're capable of doing something. They're really capable of doing anything. It just takes more time, more breaking things down. But they're truly amazing, and I love working with them." In our second story, a scary situation ended happily when a Good Samaritan was able to comfort a suicidal woman. The woman had crawled onto metal beams in the subway station at Broadway and Lafayette in New York City. The beams are about 20 feet above the ground, making for a very dangerous drop. But a young man crawled onto the beams, put his arm around her, and stayed with her until emergency personnel arrived. An onlooker said, "I hope she gets the help she needs," and bravo to the young man for risking his own safety to help. And for our final story, it looks like 92-year-old Millie Seaver took the lyrics of the hit song Dancing in the Street literally. Millie was dancing alone in the parking lot of her apartment building when Sergeant Kim Lenz of the Austin Police Department pulled over. The cop thought Millie could use a dance partner, so she got out of her patrol car and joined in on the fun. The sweet moment was captured on Sergeant Lenz's dash cam, and it's been viewed over 100,000 times.
Amazon is expanding. The retail giant announced they'll be pouring $5 billion into a second headquarters somewhere in North America. They currently headquarter in Seattle and promise HQ2 will be fully equal. This is huge for a few reasons. First off, it will generate at least 50,000 full-time jobs in whatever city it lands in. In addition, there'll be tax cuts and incentives like relocation packages. Amazon founder and CEO Jeff Bezos said, quote, "Amazon HQ2 will bring billions of dollars in upfront and ongoing investments and tens of thousands of high-paying jobs. We're excited to find a second home." Amazon is taking proposals from interested cities, and they'll choose a location by next year. Dallas, Houston, Toronto, Chicago, St. Louis, Kentucky, and Miami have already thrown in their bids.
It's been 8 months since pop icon George Michael passed away, but he's back with a funkalicious overhaul of a forgotten B-side called Fantasy. In 2016, Michael stumbled onto the forgotten track and decided to rework it with legendary producer Nile Rodgers. The song debuted on Radio 2 by George Michael's manager David Austin, who said it was initially slated to be released on Michael's 1990 album Listen Without Prejudice. You ain't got time for me. I'll find another fantasy. Michael, who passed away on Christmas Day of last year from complications of a heart condition known as dilated cardiomyopathy, hadn't released new music since 2012's White Light. And if Fantasy isn't your cup of tea, don't worry. The Freedom 90 singer left about 3 albums worth of unreleased music. George Michael, an artist with the freedom and notoriety to drop new music even after his death.
In a significant change in the car industry, Jaguar Land Rover announced that all of their vehicles will be electrified by 2020. No more gas guzzlers, just fully electric or hybrid models. Thanks to stringent emissions regulations, other car manufacturers are also following suit. Volvo is going electric by 2019, BMW promised 25 electrified models by 2025, and Aston Martin says they'll go completely hybrid by the same year. But Bloomberg reports we're going to need more lithium if we're going to fuel all of those electric cars. There is plenty of lithium, it is right there in the ground, but we're going to need to build more mines and lots of them to get it out. Millennials were raised to care about what they put in their body, so food entitlement has become a sort of mantra for them. According to the Wall Street Journal, Hannah Logan, a senior at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, said, if you're not eating good things, how do they expect your brain to grow? And colleges have noticed, based on the rising demands for fair trade coffee and locally sourced fruits and vegetables, schools and their cafeterias are bending to the will of these students and their elite tastes. UMass Amherst nearly doubled their food budget in the past 3 years to $4.9 million in order to serve sustainable, locally grown foods to their student body and their students' bodies. And with college tuitions having risen nearly 400% over the last 30 years, repeat, 400% over the last 30 years, it is not surprising they're catering to these highly expensive superfood demands. More Top 30 after this break.
Authorities have broken up a shoplifting ring that stole merchandise worth more than $20 million. Last week, law enforcement officers arrested 12 people and seized about 30 grand in cash, along with at least a dozen trash bags filled with new clothes. A San Diego grand jury indicted 22 people they say were working together for at least 10 years. Here's how they did it. Vendors in Tijuana placed special orders for designer brands like Louis Vuitton or Calvin Klein. Shoplifting crews would then scout malls in the U.S. and distract the store clerks while so-called mules took merchandise. When they had to, they used violence. Some defendants are accused of driving through a crowd to get away from a robbery at a Hollister store. Another knocked over a stroller and injured the baby's father. An agent from Homeland Security said that if released, some of the defendants would, quote, go right back to shoplifting. If found guilty, the shoplifters face up to 10 years in jail, as well as fines of $250,000, just a fraction of what they stole.
Researchers want to see how 5 people with fast-paced lives would react to spending 3 days isolated in nature. The participants have high-stress jobs like police officer and will travel to Sweden to live in a glass cube for 72 hours. Researchers will measure the overall well-being of the participants over those 3 days. They chose Sweden because studies show people who live close to nature have some of the lowest stress levels. I'm not entirely sure I needed a study to tell me that. Did you know that something as simple as seeing a public service announcement in a video game can change the way you think? New research conducted by Blanton and Burroughs and published in Communications Research says subliminal messages infused throughout video games work because players naturally succumb to subliminal messaging when they immerse themselves in virtual worlds. According to CNBC, Hart Blanton, a professor of psychological sciences at the University of Connecticut, said, there isn't any reason why commercials or video games can't think of ways of folding in public service announcements in ways that enhance the gaming experience to make it more real. Because the emerging scientific field studying the effects of virtual reality says embedding health messages like don't drink and drive, avoid smoking, and practice safe sex actually work. Placing messages in games where you would see them in real life, like having anti-drunk driving ads on DMV walls, works because it's nothing gamers wouldn't expect in real life. Another helpful subliminal message might be, you're grown up now, it's time to move out of your parents and get a job.
Does your height impact your health? A recent study says yes, for several different conditions. A study published in the journal Circulation Cardiovascular Genetics says taller people are more prone to blood clots. That can partly be explained because the taller someone is, the longer distance the blood has to travel, meaning there's more opportunity for a blood clot. Previous studies have shown cancer, heart problems, and diabetes may be linked to height as well. But doctors caution there are numerous things you can control, diet, exercise, and rest, that can help prevent most conditions. The closest you can get to your dream guy may be drinking him, and you can do it at Carrera Cafe in Los Angeles. According to Los Angeles Magazine, the cafe uses specialized technology called a ripple maker to print any image onto the foam of your latte. The cafe debuted new latte art on their Instagram account that's sure to make you swoon, the Ryan Gosling latte. They've previously done latte art of Spider-Man actor Tom Holland, and now the top 30 team has been immortalized in foam. Who knew we could taste this good?
That is it for today's Top 30. Here are some stories coming up that you need to know about. Avocados are getting more expensive. A woman spent more than a decade trying to free a man from prison, even though he'd been convicted of murdering her brother. Are your children getting enough exercise? A new study says fewer than 1% of preschoolers do. However, they get plenty of time in front of screens. Top 30 is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So like, follow, and subscribe to @Top30TV and never miss a story. It is all coming up on the next Top 30.